shootings on this estate since 2010. We've also had a fatal stabbing. There was a murder of Carl McDonald not far from here, which I understand we still haven't found the perpetrator there. So there is certainly an issue of violent crime. I would link this back to inequality as much as I'd link it back to the need for more policing. And let me just give two examples of where it's working and where it's not working. The example where it's working is Keys House, if you know it, which is about a 10-minute walk from here, where we've got fantastic youth facilities, we've got a basketball court, we've got a sound mixing room and a media suite where young people are able to really feel that they've got a stake in the community. Where it's not working is the Yvonne Carr Community Centre on the Patmore Estate, which is closed in the evenings because there's no funding to keep that open. And we're talking just small amounts of money. So for me, yes, we need more community policing, and you know, I think that's something that all of us would agree with. But also, we need more community facilities. It's something I fight very hard.
Idle hands make mischief, as we know, but the young people need to be occupied and given a feeling of worth and respect themselves. Now, I played football when I was a teenager at the Battersea Sports Centre, when it's not just a basic tarmac, it wasn't like a playground, it wasn't covered or had astronaut service, nothing like that. But it's been there 50 years. It's part of the community. It shouldn't be moved. Why move it? Why not build houses? I've talked with the management there, they happen to compromise. It should not be closed and it should not be moved, because you can't reproduce anything by moving a community away. It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same. Move it to Winstanley, it's going to be a sterile. Who can afford to go there? I hear there's talk of a swimming pool. Maybe, I doubt it. We've got over 1,000 signatures now from our campaign. Now, the main difference between the Labour campaign and the UKIP campaign is that we want to keep it there, let it grow organically. Many hundreds of people signed the Labour campaign, and one chap I remember wrote into the ones of the Guardian saying how he felt betrayed because it was the Labour petition, come and sign here, who subsequently found out they were happy enough for it to move. I say no, leave it where it is. Build a community. Many people from all over London go there, as you may well know. In fact, I had one chap in signing the petition. I said, it's a lot from here, can I sign? I detected an accent. He's from Florida, Miami. He's signing away. He said, when places like this close down, the crime rate goes up, the police chief asks for more money to fight crime, and do you know what? He gets it. Now, how ridiculous is that? Young people need a place to vent express themselves, and we can introduce into Battersea music, theatre, have constructive places. I mean, teachers, and if we can't afford it, I'm sure we can, people can donate their time, we'll pay for the facility, and they can have learn the piano. If they don't quite take to that, they can play the guitar. Or if they want to do a bit of engineering practice, mechanics, they don't quite like that, they can go to something else, interchangeable. Occupy them. But retain the sports centres.
Great. Thank you very much.
I think your question was partly about rebuilding trust in the police as well. I think that is really important. I think that rebuilding trust, particularly in London, and the relationship between London's population and the Metropolitan Police is very important and still a work in progress. I welcome the review that Theresa May launched on stop and search powers. I think that was well received in many parts of our community and other parts of London. I've also, over the time I was a Member of Parliament, I did quite a lot of work with Operation Trident to understand in particular the problems of gang crime that affect our community, and we'll mention a couple of the local crimes that have not been solved, and the reason for that is because they're gang related. And there are some witnesses in one or two of those cases, but they're too frightened to give evidence. And in one case, the victim himself, in one of those drive-by shootings, won't give evidence about who shot him. So the police are hampered. So there's a lot of work needs to go on the issue with regard to gang crime. And one of the things I welcome is that Operation Trident is starting to work with much younger people. They're now working in primary schools. I know as a health minister how vulnerable some very young children are to being sucked into gang crime. And I think that we need to make that, it's important that we're working with those very young children to identify those who might be drawn into that. Locally, our police, I think, have done a good job. I think they do a really fantastic job of liaising with the community. I think Wandsworth Police are very experimental in the way they communicate and the way they build relationships, and I think that's a good thing. Crime in Wandsworth is down 30% over the last decade, 14% since 2010. We do have more officers public-facing, and they're organised in different ways. One of the things, the changes I welcome that happened about halfway through the Parliament is that Wandsworth Police changed a lot of their shifts on Friday and Saturday nights to be much later. So people on the estates in particular were saying they wanted to see the police in the early hours of the morning, and Wandsworth Police reorganised themselves to do that. And I welcome that, and we have some very vigorous safe neighbourhood panels as well that work very well with our police. So I think we've got some really good policing locally, but I think in terms of rebuilding trust in policing across London, that is still a work in progress.
A lady here in green.
First of all, thank you all for coming. My question is, do the panellists agree that MP representation is irrelevant in this area when we have a single-party dominated council determined to close services and sell their soul to the highest bidder? How will you get the council to listen to you?
Excellent question, if I may say so. The answer is that every one of you people here this evening, ladies and gentlemen, to attend a council meeting. Won't ask for a show of hands, but how many of you have attended a council meeting? Because I'll tell you, yeah, but you've got 200 people here. How many people have attended? I put to you, not that many, less than half, 10% of you. You'll be surprised. It's a shock. Treated with disdain and contempt. It's not a public meeting, it's a meeting in public. That's what it is, but there's hope, because we've got a gathering of 200 people here. I urge every one of you to perhaps look through your calendars or through the council website, attend a council meeting. I believe they're held here. We'll go to the main council chamber in the town hall, sit in and have a look. And you'll see exactly what I say. So when it comes to the next election, the council elections, you'll decide, won't you? That's a very good question. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much. Jane, would you like to?
Well, I mean, Haggy, you and I have discussed some of these issues before, but I think it's a bit harsh on the council. I mean, there are elections every 4 years. I mean, it's blaming the councillors who get elected for being elected and then saying, you know, there's too many of them. I mean, it's a democracy. You know, the people of this borough go to the polls every 4 years. All of these parties sat here in front of you put themselves up for election. I suspect the Labour Party probably feel a bit hard done to by your question, because they actually did make some gains in the last local elections. The Lib Dems have never had a seat, as far as I'm aware, on Wandsworth Council. But, you know, it's a democracy.
1983.
1983, well, there you go. There you go. There was briefly a moment of three-party politics on Wandsworth Council. You know, people go to the polls and they vote for who they want, and, you know, I think I would conclude that an awful lot of people in this borough actually think the council does a good job. I don't think they get everything right. You and I have had discussions about some of the things that frustrated us both. Probably if I was to criticise myself over the last 5 years, I would say that sometimes I should have been a bit more open in public about the things that I've disagreed with the council on, because there are things I've disagreed with them on. But, you know, one big point here, Wandsworth's council tax at Band D is £683, Lambeth's is £1,238. If you're a lower income family, which borough would you rather live in?
So apart from the ward in which we sit right now, at every level of government you're represented by Conservatives. Your councillors, your council, your MP, your GLA, your mayor, your governor and your Prime Minister. I very much think that we need a counter voice in that, standing up for those that don't believe in everything that the council is doing. And obviously some things fall into national spend, so protecting our GP surgeries is something that would come under the government, as would cheaper and simpler childcare, which many people have raised. But let me leave you with one example of something that Martin Linton, our previous MP, who's a great friend of mine and is actually here this evening, achieved. Well, he was an MP, achieved many things, but just one thing is getting a P5 bus onto the Patmore estate. Now, it might sound pretty trivial, but if you live on the Patmore estate with no bus services and you're not confident enough to walk down to the local shops or get out at the weekend, and now suddenly you've got a bus there that's able to take you, that can transform lives, and that is something that an MP could do, and I'd like to replicate that.
I think the problem that you're experiencing and that we all experience is that our council here doesn't listen. I've experienced it. When we were campaigning to keep Battersea Park Adventure Playground open, we had 2,000 petitions, and we had a huge and very sensible push to make people outside of the borough pay. The council didn't listen. When we were trying to, when we did petitions to keep our 1 o'clock clubs open, the council didn't listen. When it comes to important things, like for instance a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit to keep pollution down in our area, the council doesn't listen. You have to actually get a petition up to get a 20-mile-an-hour zone arranged in your area. I think there's a couple in Putney, there's single streets, but there isn't a sort of cross-about 20-mile-an-hour speed limit again across the borough as a whole. But the reason why the council can get away with not listening is the vested interest. It's the very thing that Jane mentioned, council tax. And yet, when we were campaigning for the services everybody knows that they need, people said, I'd rather pay more council tax and have these services.